This is Audible.
Halloween stories, scary stories for kids, Halloween jokes, activities, and more. Haunted Halloween Book 5. Written by Arnie Lightning. Narrated by Rod Johnson. The Vampire Next Door.
"I saw it again!"
shrieked Megan, running breathlessly downstairs to the breakfast table one chilly October morning.
"I saw Mr. Laurentius transform into a bat and fly around his yard last night."
"Give me a total break," said Megan's big brother Adam. He was eating his cereal with chocolate milk and leafing through a comic book. "How many times do I have to tell you that Mr. Laurentius is not a vampire? He's just a weird old man who lives alone."
"But he doesn't live alone,"
protested Megan.
"He was flying around with a bunch of other bats."
Megan's big sister Shelby laughed.
"What do you think? That he's capturing people, sucking their blood and turning them into vampires?"
Shelby sucked her lower lip in and pretended to have fangs. She leaped up and stood over Adam as if she were about to suck his blood. But Megan didn't find this funny.
"That's exactly what I think,"
she replied.
"And I wouldn't laugh about it if I were you. After all, Mr. Laurentius has only lived in our neighborhood for a week. After he gets settled in, people around here will start disappearing. Just wait."
"She's nuts," Adam said to Shelby. Shelby nodded in agreement.
"Absolutely bonkers,"
she added, reaching out to ruffle Megan's long, honey-brown hair. Megan ducked away. If her big brother and sister didn't believe her now, she was sure they would later. A week passed, then 2 weeks. Before Megan knew it, it was almost Halloween. So far, nothing suspicious had happened, and although Megan didn't want to admit it, she was beginning to wonder whether the 2 times she had seen Mr. Laurentius' creepy transformation into a bat had been just her imagination. Even though it would be embarrassing to be wrong, Megan hoped she was. The last thing she needed was a vampire living next door. Then, the day before Halloween, Megan and the rest of her 3rd grade class at school received a disturbing piece of news. Howie Ashton, the most annoying boy in their class, had gone missing the night before. His parents had called the police right away, but so far, no one had been able to track Howie down. The moment Megan heard this, her heartbeat kicked into high gear. She raised her hand and waited for the teacher to call on her. "Yes, Megan?" asked Mr. Clark. Megan swallowed hard.
"Do you happen to know where Howie was last seen?"
she asked, in a trembly voice. "Yes, as a matter of fact," replied Mr. Clark. "According to his parents, Howie was selling candy bars for the school fundraiser yesterday evening. His mom said he was going door to door along Evergreen Street." Megan gasped to herself. Evergreen Street was her street, and more than that, it was Mr. Laurentius' street, too. Suddenly, she was certain that Mr. Laurentius was indeed a vampire, and that he had indeed captured Howie. Megan wondered if Howie was a vampire now, too, and she knew there was only one way to find out. That evening, while Adam and Shelby were busy getting ready for the big Halloween party they were having tomorrow for their high school friends, Megan slipped quietly out of the house and tiptoed to the yard next door. Her parents were so busy helping with party preparations that Megan was sure they wouldn't miss her for a while. Hopefully, it's just a while, Megan thought, and not forever. She shook with terror as she entered Mr. Laurentius' yard, but she knew she shouldn't turn back. Howie may have been an annoying kid, but Megan didn't want anything bad to happen to him, and she wanted his family to get some answers. Mr. Laurentiu's house was as dark as ever, so Megan had no idea whether or not he was home. She slipped around to the back of the house, her heart hammering almost audibly. When she reached one of the basement windows, Megan crouched down in the dry grass and peered into the dark, dank basement. To her surprise, the window budged when she touched it, and Megan realized it was open. Without thinking too hard about the horrendously frightening thing she was doing, she quietly opened the window a bit further and lowered herself down through it. She landed on a pile of blankets so dusty she nearly sneezed. Then, as her eyes began to adjust to the basement darkness, Megan saw, with growing horror, that the room was filled with coffins. Vampires slept in coffins. Her theory was correct, and since it was dark out, Megan knew the vampires would be getting up soon. She had to hurry if she wanted to find Howie. "Howie?" she called in a low, wobbly voice, hoping that Mr. Laurentiu and the other vampires wouldn't hear her.
"Howie? Are you here?"
Suddenly, Megan heard a familiar voice behind her.
"Megan, you came to save me."
It was Howie's voice. Relieved, Megan spun around, then froze. The voice had been coming from Howie, all right, but he was no longer the Howie Megan knew. He was Howie the vampire now, and Mr. Laurentiu was right behind him. They were both laughing at her, their pointed fangs glistening against their pale skin, their arms reaching out to grab her. Megan turned to run, but she quickly realized she was surrounded by vampires on all sides. Vampires who wanted to suck her blood.
"Help!"
screamed Megan.
"Someone, please, help me!"
The next thing Megan knew, she was waking up inside a velvet-lined coffin. Her skin was as pale as Mr. Laurentiu's, and she had a long pair of fangs of her own. She also felt very bloodthirsty. Then she remembered Adam and Shelby and smiled to herself.
"Let's see if they believe in vampires now."
Just for fun activity. Make a frighteningly fun vampire mask that you can wear. You will need purple paper plate, scissors, black construction paper, red construction paper, white construction paper, red marker, black marker, popsicle stick, glue. Have an adult help you cut 2 large eye holes in a purple paper plate, making sure the spacing is measured to fit your face. Cut 2 short strips of black construction paper for eyebrows and position at angles above the eye holes. Glue in place. Cut out a long black oval for a nose and glue beneath the eyes. Cut a medium-sized rectangle of red construction paper for a mouth. Round the edges and glue beneath the nose, adding 2 pointy pieces of white construction paper for fangs. Use a red marker to extend smile lines upward from the corners of the mouth. Use a black marker to color vampire hair on the top of your mask, bringing it down to a point between the eyebrows. Have an adult help you attach a large popsicle stick to the bottom of the mask, gluing it to the back side. Now hold the mask up in front of your face. You're a vampire. Music, http://www.purple-planet.com. The ghost in the apartment. "I don't like this apartment building," Jose complained to his mom for the billionth time. "It's really creepy. Tell me again why we have to live here." Mom gave Jose a tired smile.
You know as well as I do. Until I get another job, we just don't have the money to pay the rent on a nicer place. This is the best we can do, so we'll have to learn to like it for the time being.
Jose sighed. He walked to the front windows of the ancient apartment. The floorboards creaked under his feet. From the dusty windows, he could look down over the streets of the city. The crazy bumper-to-bumper traffic, the little delis and shops lined up along the next block. Jose's father had left when he was 3, and Jose and his mom had lived alone ever since. Last month, the office where Jose's mother had worked had gone out of business. Now, she had to work a part-time job at a department store until something better came along. That meant that she and Jose had to move to this building from the nicer apartment where they had lived before. Mom said that would help their money stretch farther. But Jose couldn't help feeling that there was something very disturbing about this new apartment. He could tell from the cool wind that seemed to blow through his tiny bedroom even when the windows were shut. He could tell from the strange, creaking noises he heard as he lay awake at night. He could tell from the way things were never exactly where he'd left them, like his backpack or his shoes. Mom said that Jose was being silly and that the apartment would feel a lot less creepy after they had finished cleaning it up. They worked on that all weekend, but even with the shiny clean windows and sparkling floors, the apartment still seemed creepy to Jose. That very night, as Jose was trying hard to fall asleep, he heard a loud clank, clank, clank that nearly made his heart stop. He sat up in bed and drew the covers around him.
Who's there?
He called, his voice shaking. No one answered, but the clanking noises grew nearer.
Who's there?
Jose called again, more boldly.
I know there's something weird going on in this apartment. Please don't keep me guessing any longer.
That seemed to do the trick. As soon as Jose had spoken the words, a small, pale figure shimmered into view. In terror, Jose realized it was a ghost, dragging behind it a loud, clanking chain. Jose was just about to scream for Mom when the ghost silenced him in a low, raspy voice.
"Silly boy," it said. "I won't hurt you."
You won't?" stammered Jose.
"No,"
the ghost answered firmly. "It isn't you who did me wrong." Jose's heartbeat accelerated. He clutched the cover so hard, his knuckles turned red.
What are you talking about?
The ghost looked Jose over, as if deciding something, and then it began to speak.
5 long years ago,
it began,
I was a boy just your age. My name was Mario, and I lived in the apartment with my family. One night, my parents and older sisters went out. They left me with a babysitter. Her name was Clara, and she acted kind around my parents, but she was a really cruel old woman. The moment my family had left, Clara locked me in a closet and told me that I was a bad boy. I hadn't done anything, so I knew she was out of her mind. But I couldn't get out of that closet, so I kicked and screamed the whole time. Clara must have been afraid someone would find her out, because she finally unlocked the door and struck me in the head with a hammer. I died an hour later, and I never saw my family again, except as a ghost. Mario began to weep. Clara had left the apartment before they got back, and they were never able to find her. Until Clara gets caught, I must carry this chain around with me. That's my mission, you see, to protect other people from Clara. But I can't do that unless I can find her. Jose felt terrible for Mario, and terrified about the fact that there was such a person as Clara. But suddenly, he had an idea. "I can help you find Clara," he exclaimed. Jose stayed true to his promise. Every day for 2 whole months, he and his friends did research on the internet and in the public library. They tracked down as many women as they could by the name of Clara, and they called phone number after phone number. But they couldn't find the Clara who had killed Mario. Jose and the ghost had become close friends by then, and Jose was very sorry that he and the others couldn't help Mario. Then one October night, Mom had to stay late at work for a meeting, so she got a babysitter for Jose. "Her name is Claudia," she said, "and she comes highly recommended by the babysitting agency." Claudia was a sweet old woman, and Jose thought he would like her. But the moment Mom left, Mario appeared to Jose in his room. "That's her," he cried. "That's Clara. She must have changed her name to Claudia." Jose felt sick with terror. "What do I do?" "Call the police," hissed Mario, vanishing just before Claudia entered the room. "What are you doing, boy?" she asked Jose in a rough voice, and Jose knew he was in for it. He could tell by the wild look in her eyes he couldn't stay in this apartment a moment longer. Thinking quickly, Jose told her, I just realized that I forgot to pick up candy at the drugstore on the corner. Mom needs it for trick-or-treaters this weekend." Claudia looked him up and down. Finally she replied, "You may go. I'll be ready for you when you come back." She tried to keep her voice even, but Jose didn't miss the evil gleam in her expression. Without wasting a moment, he left the apartment and ran to the drugstore. But instead of buying candy, Jose called the police and reported Claudia to them. The police were very excited to finally arrest the crazy woman who had killed Mario 5 years before. And as for Mario, he could finally rest in peace. After that night, Jose never saw him again. He missed his friend, but it made him happy to know that Mario was finally free from his burden. Just a few weeks later, Mom was hired full-time by the department store, and she and Jose moved to a nicer apartment in a better part of the city. No one was happier than Jose was to leave the past behind him. The Vulture. "Stop!" Ashley's friend Jana shrieked. Ashley jumped startled. "Why do I have to stop?" she asked, giving Jana a strange look. It was a bright October Saturday just before Halloween, and the two girls were walking downtown to the Halloween Fest, an annual event where kids could dress up in their costumes and trick-or-treat at all the local stores and businesses. "You almost walked under a ladder," Jana explained fearfully. "You know that's bad luck, don't you?" Ashley laughed. "Oh, Jana, you're so superstitious. Why do you believe in all that stuff?" "Because it's true," Jana answered, folding her arms over her chest. "Whether or not it sounds silly, it is absolutely true. Remember last year when Marcia Hanover broke her locker mirror at school? She had bad luck for weeks, getting sick, failing tests, her dad losing his job, her dog getting hit by a car." "This is so ridiculous," Ashley crowed. "Those things didn't happen to Marcia just because she broke a locker mirror." Jana ignored her. "Or what about Kaylee Gonzalez?" she went on.
The moment she and her family brought that black cat home from the pet rescue, all kinds of unlucky things started happening to them. Kaylee broke her leg, and then Gonzalez's basement flooded, and...
Ashley shook her head.
I don't think we're ever going to agree about this, Jana, so let's just talk about something else, like trick-or-treating.
Jana started to protest, but then she grinned at Ashley. The two friends had just arrived downtown, and there were Halloween decorations everywhere. Fake witches, ghosts, and ghouls decorated the fences bordering parks and office buildings. Fake tombstones and grinning jack-o'-lanterns were set up under trees. It was impossible not to be drawn into the Halloween spirit. Ashley started to walk with a spring in her step. She was dressed up as her favorite Olympic figure skater, minus the skates. She wore white boots on her feet so she could walk easily, but give off the same effect. Jana was dressed as a rock star. Her hair was wild, and she wore a short red skirt over funky, patterned tights. The girls began to flit from store to store, collecting candy in their treat bags. It was so much fun to live in a town where you could trick-or-treat twice every October. Ashley knew that once she made the rounds in her own neighborhood 2 days from now, she'd have enough candy to last her a year. Along the way, the girls stopped to talk to friends they knew from school. They were laughing and joking and having so much fun that they'd both nearly forgotten the conversation they shared on the way downtown. That is, until they were leaving the bakery with the Halloween goodies the bakery owners had given them. Halfway down the store steps, Jana paused and pointed.
Look, Ashley, she exclaimed. A vulture!
Ashley turned and followed her friend's gaze. Sure enough, a big old vulture was perched on top of one of the fake tombstones under a tree near the park.
Wow, gasped Ashley. I've never seen a real vulture up close before.
But Jana's eyes were dark with worry.
You know what this means, don't you, Ash?
She asked in a low voice. Huh? Said Ashley.
Oh, don't be so dumb, Jana cried impatiently. Everyone knows that vultures mean death. Someone is going to die soon, Ashley, or maybe they already have.
There you go with your superstitions again, Ashley exclaimed. She could hardly believe Jana sometimes.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that stuff anymore.
Fine, Jana huffed.
Have it your way. But don't say I didn't warn you.
Things between the girls felt a little strained as the sun sank lower in the sky and they finished up their downtown trick-or-treating. A few different times, when Ashley happened to glance over her shoulder, she noticed that the vulture seemed to be following her. Chills skittered down her spine, but she quickly shook them away. It was ridiculous to believe in superstitions. After stopping to get candy at all of the stores, Ashley and Jana finally headed home. It was nearly dark now, and a stiff wind had blown up, scattering the fallen leaves along the streets and sidewalks. Once Ashley heard a rustling noise up in a tree. When she looked to see what it was, her gaze locked with the vulture. Why wouldn't it leave her alone? Ashley wrapped her arms around herself and walked faster. She didn't dare tell Jana she was a little bit afraid of the large bird, especially after laughing off all of her friend's superstitions. At the corner between the blocks where they lived, the two friends said goodbye to each other. Ashley could tell Jana was still irritated with her. Then she turned to walk home alone. Just as she headed into her front yard, the vulture swooped through the descending darkness and landed on the bush by Ashley's front door. Ashley's mouth ran dry, and her heart thumped noisily in her chest. She ran up the walkway and let herself into the house. It was pitch dark inside.
Mom? Dad? Sabrina? Ryan?
Ashley called in a trembling voice. No answer. Ashley reached over and clicked on the living room lights. Then she screamed and screamed and screamed. Her family was there all right. Dad in his favorite chair reading the Saturday paper, Mom on the couch, her laptop propped in her lap, Sabrina sprawled on the floor with her homework, and Ryan hunched over his toy cars in the corner of the room. And they were all dead as doornails. Ashley sank to her knees in horror and shock. Outside, the vulture gave one last long cry. Ashley woke up in a panic terror. It was all a dream. But outside her window, there was a vulture stooped in the tree. Just a costume?
I wonder who's going to win the costume contest.
Natalie said to her friends. They were all standing around the refreshment table at Town Hall, where the big annual Halloween party was going on. Natalie had been planning her costume for almost a year, and she was sure it was the very best of all. She was dressed as a unicorn, complete with a unicorn horn on her head and a sparkly pink and purple glitter wig.
"You have a great chance of winning, Nat,"
her best friend Erica told her loyally. But Natalie's other best friend, Daniel, wasn't as convinced. "What about that kid over there?" he asked, pointing to a party guest who was all dressed up in a Grim Reaper-style costume. Natalie had to agree with Daniel that the costume wasn't any ordinary Grim Reaper get-up. In fact, she had never seen a Grim Reaper costume quite like it. She couldn't even see the face of the kid who was wearing it, because the hood of his cloak was so deep. His hands, protruding from the sleeves of the cloak, were long and bony, and somehow his entire body seemed shrouded in darkness. Natalie turned back to her friends with a shiver, and Daniel laughed.
"See what a good costume it is?" he asked. "It's freaking you out just to look at it."
Natalie smiled uncomfortably. She didn't want to admit that, for some strange reason, her heart was beating faster now, and her palms were actually sweating. Erica seemed to be having a similar reaction to the kid in the costume. She rubbed her arms briskly and turned to fill her plastic cup with more fruit punch.
"Well, maybe you'll at least come in second place, Natalie."
Natalie grabbed a pumpkin-shaped sugar cookie and took a big bite out of it.
"I'd be happy with the second place," she replied, "as long as I win a prize."
After that, Natalie tried her best to forget all about the kid in the Grim Reaper costume. It didn't make any sense to her why he creeped her out so much, but just the same, she preferred not to think about him. Natalie, Daniel, and Erica spent the next couple of hours enjoying themselves at the party. They danced to Monster Mash and the other Halloween-themed songs. They bobbed for apples, played Pin the Hat on the Witch, and got very sticky making sweet treats at the do-it-yourself popcorn ball station. Half an hour before it was time for the costume contest judging, there was one last thing the friends still hadn't done. So they headed off to walk through the haunted house that was set up in one of the empty town hall offices. Usually, haunted houses didn't scare Natalie at all, but tonight she was particularly on edge. Every time a volunteer jumped out at her, dressed as a monster or a ghost, Natalie shrieked. But her loudest scream of all came just as she and her friends were leaving the office. The kid, dressed as the Grim Reaper, was standing silently outside the door, staring from beneath his hood at anyone who walked past. He startled Natalie so badly she couldn't contain her scream.
"Chill, Nat,"
Daniel cried, grabbing her by the arm.
"What's up with you?"
Natalie had no choice but to confess now. She lowered her voice and whispered to her friends,
"That Grim Reaper kid really creeps me out." "Me too," Erica admitted.
"Oh, that's—" Daniel began, glancing over his shoulder, but he couldn't finish his sentence. Suddenly something about the kid in the Grim Reaper costume seemed to scare him too.
"Let's go,"
Daniel said, pulling Natalie and Erica back toward the main hall where the party was. Natalie felt much better now that she was surrounded by lots of people again. It was almost time for the contest judging, so she, Erica, and Daniel pressed close to the front of the crowd of kids. That way, they'd be ready if their names were announced. A woman, dressed as a clown, stepped up to a podium with a microphone.
"Attention, everyone," she began. "It is now time to announce the winners of this year's annual Halloween costume contest. Without further ado, third place goes to Jacob Westberg for his Creature from the Black Lagoon costume."
Everyone clapped as Jacob walked to the front of the hall, pulled off his mask, and took a bow.
"Second place," announced the clown, "goes to Natalie Jenkins for her unicorn costume."
Natalie flushed with pleasure. Joining Jacob up front, she removed the shiny mask she wore over her eyes and took a bow of her own. Her friends cheered loudly.
"And the grand prize winner of our annual Halloween costume contest is," began the clown, pausing dramatically, "GR for his incredible Grim Reaper costume."
Chills stole through Natalie as the Grim Reaper kid slowly glided to the front of the hall to join her and Jacob. What kind of name was GR anyway? Didn't this kid have a last name? And then it hit Natalie, as suddenly as a bolt of lightning strikes a tree. The horrid realization stole her breath. GR stood for Grim Reaper. Could this kid really be the actual Grim Reaper? Was that why his costume was so bone-chillingly realistic? Because he was the messenger of death itself? "Show us your face," the clown lady urged GR, smiling and clueless. She got her wish. With a flourish, GR threw off his hood, and everyone gasped. Natalie's question had been answered with a resounding yes. She, her friends, and everyone else at Town Hall were now staring straight into the black face of death. At that precise moment, smoke alarms began going off around the building. "Fire!" somebody screamed. Natalie just squeezed her eyes shut tight. What was the point of trying to escape the coming flames? It was their time. She just knew it. The Grim Reaper had come for them all. Just for fun activity, make some delicious Halloween punch for your next party, just like the punch Natalie and her friends enjoyed at their party. You will need ½ gallon of limeade, 1 liter of ginger ale, ½ gallon of lime sherbet, bag of mini marshmallows, small jar of maraschino cherries, gummy worms. Have an adult help you mix a ½ gallon of limeade with 1 liter of ginger ale. Add a ½ gallon of lime sherbet, scooping into punch bowl. Add a bag of mini marshmallows, a small jar of maraschino cherries, and a handful of gummy worms to float in the punch. Serve cold with extra gummy worms and marshmallows for party guests. Yum!
Old Priscilla. A long time ago, in the far reaches of a very dark forest, 6 brothers lived with their mother in a small, simple wooden cabin. Their names were Aaron, Benjamin, Christopher, David, Ethan, and Freddie. Their mother had given them A, B, C, D, E, F names in the order of their birth, so that there was never any question of who was the oldest. For years, the boys and their mother enjoyed the same simple routine. They rose at 5 in the morning, enjoying a delicious breakfast of eggs and bacon, and, as their mother tended the cabin and the youngest boys, the older boys would spend their day hard at work in the forest, chopping down trees for firewood. Later, they would sell the firewood in town. Their life wasn't fancy, and it wasn't easy, but they were a happy and satisfied family. In fact, there was only one thing that the boys and their mother would have changed about their circumstances. It wasn't a better house, or more money, or having to work less, as you may imagine. Rather, they simply wished that old Priscilla Bentley had never come to their part of the forest. Old Priscilla was their only neighbor for miles around. She lived an hour's walk from them, along the bed of the rushing stream where the boy's mother went to wash the weekly laundry. Rumor had it that old Priscilla was a witch. Aaron and his younger brothers had heard all kinds of terrifying tales about her. According to the townspeople and the forest dwellers alike, old Priscilla had a special hatred toward children. Whenever a child seemed to vanish from the area and was never seen again by his or her family, which happened quite a lot in that particular region, he or she was said to have been captured by the witch. What old Priscilla did with her prisoners, no one quite knew. That was why everyone did their very best to stay clear of her. Aaron, the oldest son, remembered seeing old Priscilla only once when he was a very small boy. He had gone to the stream with his mother on laundry day, and he had spotted old Priscilla eyeing him from a distance
as she gathered berries up on the hillside. Aaron knew that he would never forget the sight of her shriveled face, bony limbs, cold glare, and the wild gray ribbons of hair. This was a story he often shared with his younger brothers as they sat by the fireside at night. The years that had passed had not dimmed Aaron's frightening memory in the least. His brothers vowed they weren't afraid of an old woman like Priscilla, but Aaron didn't miss the way their voices trembled as they spoke. Then one autumn, everything changed for the family in the cabin. As the days grew shorter and colder, the boy's mother fell ill with a raging fever. Aaron and David took the horse into town to fetch a doctor, leaving their mother in the care of Benjamin and the other boys. But by the time they returned with the doctor, it was too late. Their mother was dead. The boys mourned her loss throughout the chilly gray days that followed. They had dug a grave for their mother under a looming evergreen, and they went there often to visit with her. Aaron was firm about the younger boys needing to be home before sunset, especially because one never knew when old Priscilla might be lurking. But one afternoon, little Freddie, the youngest son, lost track of time. He was a dreamer and a storyteller, and it made him feel close to his mother when he sat by her grave and shared all the details of his life for her. Freddie had just finished recounting a funny incident that had taken place between Christopher and Ethan when he realized that the autumn sun was slipping behind the hills, and he also realized that he wasn't alone. An old woman with wild gray hair, wearing a long cloak, stood mere feet away from him. Her smile was crooked in her bony face, and Freddie shivered in his tattered jacket as she leered at him. He knew without a doubt that this must be old Priscilla. She spoke to him in a cracked, old voice that sent chills down Freddie's spine.
"It's hard, isn't it? Living without a mother?"
she asked. Freddie was too afraid to speak, so he just nodded.
"You know,"
old Priscilla offered thoughtfully,
"I've always wanted sons, specifically 6 sons. Would you and your brothers like to come home with me?"
Freddie's eyes widened in terror. Live with a witch? He would never.
No, thank you, ma'am,"
he stammered. But his politeness did nothing to ease old Priscilla's wrath. Her yellow eyes went wild with rage, and she broke into a lightning-fast run, chasing Freddie through the forest all the way back to his cabin.
"I'll get you, and your brothers along with you,"
old Priscilla screamed.
"You'll see."
Freddie threw open the cabin door and rushed inside, shutting old Priscilla out. His brothers were laying a fire, and Aaron looked very relieved to see Freddie. "I was just about to go looking for you," he said. And that was all he had time to say. At that moment, the cabin door burst open, shooting sparks, as if a magical spell had been cast over it. Old Priscilla entered the weathered house in a mighty blaze of anger. Her eyes glowed, and she seemed to hover inches above the floor. Her bony fingertips shimmered like the embers of a fire, and she began to chant an ancient incantation. When she was finished, there was nothing left of Freddie and his older brothers but 6 plump, orange pumpkins with glowing faces. Smiling in satisfaction, old Priscilla gathered them up and took them home to display in the window of her shanty as the first ever Halloween jack-o'-lanterns. Just for fun activity, make Halloween witch hats that you and your friends can eat. You will need a pack of all chocolate cookies Oreos, Thin Mints, or chocolate wafer. Orange frosting, chocolate kisses, M&Ms. Start with an all-chocolate cookie, such as a Thin Mint or a chocolate wafer. Oreos can work too. Use orange frosting to glue an unwrapped chocolate kiss to the center of the cookie. Press an M&M or other similar candy into the frosting in front of the kiss for a hat buckle. Make as many witch hat cookies as you wish. Share with others and enjoy. Music, http://www.purple-planet.com. Funny Halloween jokes. Why does Dracula have no friends? Because he's a pain in the neck. What kind of car did the Frankenstein buy? A monster truck. How do you stop a monster from smelling? Cut off his nose. How does a vampire flirt? She bats her eyes. What does a monster do when he loses his head? He calls a headhunter. What kind of monster is safe to put in the washing machine? A washing werewolf. What is big and hairy and goes beep, beep, beep? A monster in a traffic jam. What did the police officer say about the mummy murder case? It is time to wrap it up. What vampire loves sweets? Snackula. What is Dracula's car called? The Mobile Blood Unit. When do ghosts play tricks on each other? April Fool's Day. Why did Frankenstein squeeze his girlfriend to death? He had a crush on her. How is a ghost like an empty house? Because there's no body there. When do vampires bite you? On Wednesdays. What is Dracula's favorite pudding? Leeches and scream. What can a monster do that you can't do? Count up to 25. On his fingers. What should you do if a monster runs through your front door? Run through the back door as fast as you can. Which ghost ate too much porridge? Goldilocks. What do you call the lead scorer vampire in soccer? A ghoul scorer. What do monsters use to stay cool? A scare conditioner. What is a monster's favorite play? Romeo and Juliet. What do sea monsters have for dinner? Fish and chips. What do you get if you cross a vampire and a circus entertainer? Something that goes straight for the jugular. Where do you find monster boogers? On the end of a monster's fingers. Why did the ghosts go to the amusement park? They wanted to ride the roller coaster. What is big, furry, dangerous, and has wheels? A monster on roller skates. What do you get if you cross Dracula with Sir Lancelot? A bite in shining armor. What do you say when you meet a three-headed monster with sharp teeth? See you later. What do you get when you cross Bambi with a ghost? Bamboo. How can you tell if a monster has a glass eye? If it comes out in conversation. What is the first thing that vampires learn at school? The alphabet. Where do monsters like to swim? The Dead Sea. What do you get if you cross a monster with a flea? A lot of terrified dogs. Where do ghosts get their mail? The ghost office. How did the beautician style the ghost's hair? With a comb and a scare dryer. What does Dracula say to his victims? It has been nice gnawing you. What is Dracula's favorite flavor ice cream? Vanilla. Where is Dracula's American office? The Empire State Building. What do you call two witches who share a room? Roommates. How does Dracula like to have his food served? In bite-sized pieces. Did you hear about the ghost comedian? He was booed off stage. Which day of the week do ghosts like best? Mondays. How come ghosts do not make good magicians? You can see right through their tricks. Did you hear about the vampire who died of a broken heart? He had loved in vain. What happens if you see twin witches? You cannot tell which witch is which. Where do baby ghosts go during the day? Day scare centers. Why was the monster standing on his head? He was turning things over in his mind. How do ghosts fly from one place to another? On a scare plane. Why was the vampire easy to fool? Because he was a complete sucker. Did you hear about the girl that wanted to marry a ghost? I do not know what possessed her. What would you get if you crossed a witch with a famous movie director? Steven Spielberg. What directions did the ghost give the goblin? Make a fright turn at the corner. How do witches lose weight? They join Weight Witches. What does a vampire take for a cold? Cough and syrup. What is the hardest thing about making monster soup? Stirring it. What does an Australian witch ride on? A broomerang. On which day do monsters eat people? Tuesday. What did the little ghost eat for lunch? A bologna sandwich. What kind of witch goes to the beach? Sandwich. What does a vampire stand on after taking a shower? A bat mat. What monster plays the most April Fool's jokes on others? Frankenstein. What do ghosts drink in the morning? Coffee with screaming sugar. What is every young monster's favorite amusement park ride? The scary-go-round. What kind of street does a ghost like best? A dead end. How does a vampire enter his house? Through the bat flap. Where did the monster keep his extra pair of hands? In a handbag. How do warty witches keep their hair fixed? With scare spray. Why did the vampire take up acting? It was in his blood. What is a vampire's favorite fruit? Blood oranges. What city do ghosts like the most? Malibu. How does a monster begin a fairy tale? Once upon a slime. What happened to the man who put his false teeth in backwards? He ate himself. What kind of book did Frankenstein like to read? One with a cemetery plot. What is a vampire's favorite drink? A Bloody Mary. What does a mother monster say to her kids at dinner time?
Do not talk with someone in your mouth.
What is a witch's favorite TV show? Lifestyles of the Witch and Famous. What did the werewolf write at the bottom of his letters? Best vicious. What did the teenage witch say to her mother?
May I have the keys to the broom tonight?
What do you do with a green monster? Put it in the sun until it ripens up. What noise do you hear if two monsters jump off a cliff? Boom. Boom. How do you stop a monster from digging up your garden? Hide a shovel. What do you call a mouse that can pick up a monster? Sir. Why are haunted houses so noisy in April? That is when the ghosts do their spring screaming. What do vampires sail the sea with? Blood vessels. What Central American country has the most spooks? Costa Rica. What did the vampire do to stop his son from biting his nails? He cut all his fingers off. What do vampires have every morning? A coffin break. Why was the student witch so bad at essays? Because she could not spell properly. What did one of Frankenstein's ears say to the other? I had no clue we lived on the same block. What do they have for lunch at Monster School? Human beings, boiled legs, and eyes cream. How do you address a monster? Very politely and from far away. What does a monster say when he meets you for the first time? Pleased to eat you. Why is Hollywood full of vampires? They need someone to play the bit parts. What do you get if you cross a vampire and a mummy? Something scary you would not want to unwrap. What is the best way to talk to a vampire? From long distance. Did you hear about the vampire who got married? He proposed to his ghoul friend. What is Dracula's favorite fruit? Nectarines. Where does the bride of Frankenstein have her hair done? At an ugly parlor. What do you call a smart monster? Frank Einstein. What did the mother ghost say to the naughty baby ghost?
Only spook when you're spooking to.
Why are vampire families so close? Because blood is thicker than water. For more awesome books for kids, please visit www.arnielightning.com/books. Music, http://www.purple-planet.com. This has been Halloween Stories. Scary stories for kids, Halloween jokes, activities, and more. Haunted Halloween Book 5. Written by Arnie Lightning. Narrated by Rod Johnson. Copyright 2015 by Arnie Lightning. Production copyright by Arnie Lightning.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.